kind of push you towards the way that you need to go. And so all this was happening all along, was the strife between Lot and Abram was just God's way of getting Lot out of the picture. It should never have been there to begin. Is not the whole land before you, he says, separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right, or if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left. Now Lot's the uncle, or Abram's the uncle. Why wouldn't he take what he wanted? Why did he allow his nephew to choose? But he did. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere like the garden of the Lord. So that was a natural, isn't it? It's always natural to go to what is comfortable. It's always natural to do what you think is right. It's always natural to take the best. It only makes sense to take the job that has the most money. Take the boy or the girl that is the better looking one, or the one that has the better job, or take the all kinds of school that would give you the most advantage. It's always that we look with our eyes, and we always take what looks the richest and the best. That's the first thing that we think. That must be God's will, right? So Abram allows Lot to make this decision on which way. Whatever way you want to go, that's fine by me. I'll go the other way. But he said, you make the decision. And so he looks out over the valley and he sees the Jordan Valley. And I mean, it was beautiful. It's like when you get up the top of Wood Street and you look out over Truro in the summertime and it's all green and everything's cut nice and the water's running through it. It's like, what a great farmland out through Old Barns. You go through there. That's beautiful out through there. And you get Shubenacadie or Stuyak River Valley. I mean, those are places where you want to go and set up. And so he looks over this, and far too often, when we're thinking about God's will for our lives, we look with our eyes and not with our spirit. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times we look with our eyes and we say, well, this makes more sense that we would go to the river valley where it's pure. But there was a problem with the river valley. Everybody wants to go to the river valley. Places like Sodom and Gomorrah, where all the cities are set up. Nobody wants to go to the hill country. Everybody wants to go to the valley. So when Lot looks out over the valley, he not just see how nice and pristine and beautiful. He called it, what did he call it? Like the garden of the Lord. And they said that Sodom and Gomorrah, before it turned into what it was an extremely beautiful place to be. I mean, it was just absolutely beautiful, the place where Sodom and Gomorrah was built. And they said they had everything that they needed. They wanted for nothing, right? And that was Sodom and Gomorrah. So he looks out over that. He says, well, there's other towns down there. I got some entertainment. We got some places we can go. We don't want to go out that way. There's nothing out there. Not that it's bad, but this is the place. Far too often, we like to keep one foot close to civilization. Sometimes we like to keep one foot in the world just because that's where all the excitement is. That's where the entertainment is. That's what I'm used to. Sometimes it's hard to come out of Sodom and Gomorrah. Sometimes it's hard to go to a place that you think might be desolate or nobody there. A lot of times it's surprising how often that we want to go to the Jordan Valley where it's well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, in the direction of, like the land of Egypt. Like what happened in the land of Egypt? Nothing good ever came out of Egypt for Israel. I mean, they went down there when there was famine, but once they got there, then they became slaves. Like nothing good. When you say Egypt to Israel, it's the worst thing you could possibly say. But here they're comparing it. Oh, it's just like Egypt, in the direction of sword. And this was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all of the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east, thus separating from each other. So Abraham settled in the land of Canaan, which is where God called him to in the beginning. While Lot settled amongst the cities of the valley, and listen to this now, and he moved his tent as far as Sodom. And I'm sure the whole time that he's heading down this way, in the back of his mind, he's likely thinking, I'm okay, I can handle this. I'm strong enough. I mean, I know what's going on at Sodom and Gomorrah. I understand that. But I don't need to be a part of that. I can set my tent up in the vicinity of Sodom and Gomorrah, but that doesn't have to affect who I am. See, his relationship was with Abram. His relationship wasn't with the Lord. That's why he's in the predicament that he's in. Right? And he keeps telling himself, I want the well-watered land close to the Sodom and Gomorrah. And so often, we think we can handle the situations that is thrown at us through life. So often we think, I can deal with this. I can handle this. This isn't going to hurt me. I mean, if you have television, you theoretically have one foot in the world. Theoretically. Possible that you can be watching TV and be close to Sodom and Gomorrah at the same time, depending on what you watch. The older church called TV demonic. Nobody should have it in their homes. Somebody said, yeah, but there's a lot of good things on that TV box too. We can bring it into our homes, right? And so what happens, right? If you got television in your home, you got the possibility of keeping one foot in the world. Now, throw your televisions out, that's your decision. But I'm telling you, you got internet, right? You got one foot possibly in the world, right? Access to telephones, access to whatever. Whatever you have that is of the world, that is in your vicinity, it's a temptation. Now, am I saying that you shouldn't have any of that stuff? Well, if the people before us had made that decision, we likely wouldn't be talking about it today. If the church had said, no, this isn't for the church, we don't need this stuff. But we sit here and we rationalize, what's wrong with it? Come on. What's wrong with television? Super Bowl Sundays when? What is it?
I have no idea.
I happened to see that it was on, they were doing a lot of talk about it, so it must be pretty close.
It's today.
Yeah, oh, is it today? It is today.
Oh, it is.
Oh, yeah, there you go. But well, we'll try to go with time. So,
Liquor stores.
but that's the way we live our lives. We live our lives with really, am I doing anything wrong by what I'm doing? Is it really wrong? The question is it really wrong? When I put one foot in the world, when I get next to Sodom and Gomorrah, and we know Sodom and Gomorrah was just a decrepit, pathetic, crazy, extreme that you would ever want. We're not there.
Like that.
Yeah. Like what's that? Right? But we're not there. We think in ourselves, well, we can handle this. We can handle what's going on in the world around us. You know, there's a lot of good things here, right? And we think we just, balance it out. So our lives is all about balance. If I can keep one foot in the Jordan Valley, and I keep one foot next to Sodom, I'm balanced, right? Sometimes we balance ourselves with, I can still sin as long as I read my Bible and pray to God and go to church. I balance my life out. And a lot of times we get on a set of scales and we say, I'm 56% good and 44% bad, and we go, that's okay. I'm okay, right? That's how we rationalize this out. Now, we look at Lot and we go, Lot, you're just jacked up crazy if you think that you can go to Sodom, tent next to Sodom, and that's not going to affect you. You're crazy in that thinking. But yet, we think we can temper and control our influx of video habits and TV habits and entertainment habits and association habits. Like, I've got some good friends and I've got some bad friends. I hang with my good friends on Sunday, but I hang with my bad friends, but I'm not as bad as they are. Right? I'm not as bad as they are. So that's okay. Right? I'm not doing the same thing that they're doing. So therefore it's okay. And they're kind of fun and they're my friends and therein lies the problem. It's the same thing as Lot had when he went into Sodom. The Lord said to Abraham, after Lot had separated, he said to him, now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. One lifted up his eyes to see what he wanted. The other one lifted up his eyes to see what God was going to give him. Big difference. Big difference between looking at what we have to to looking for what we want. And so I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, they can count your offspring can be counted as well. So he says this to Abraham. He says, arise and walk through the length and the breadth of your land, for I will give it to you. And you know, a lot of times we need to stop and look at what God has given us. And I don't mean necessary possessions, but look at where we are spiritually. Look at where God has brought us to. Look at where you're at and where you're going. And a lot of times we never stop and take a toll or take count or take a kind of stop and breathe and see what God's doing in your life. You know, far too often we just set the car in automatic and we just drive and we keep going. And we keep bumping into things and we keep spilling things and we keep doing things wrong, but we never stop and walk the breadth of the land that God has given us. Look at where you're at. Look at what God has brought you through. Stop for a minute. Just take a breath. What God has done for you. Look at where God has brought you. Look at the land, so to speak, that God has given you. The church that you're in. The new relationships that you have with your Christian friends. The new purpose that God has given you. The new direction God is leading you. And the new purpose that God has given you. Sometimes we don't stop and look at that. It seems like we're always at war. We're always fighting. We're always scrambling, trying to get back at where we should be or what we're doing, and we never stop. And just look at where you're at. And look at where you got to go. And start down that process. Far too often we're way too busy, way overstressed, way committed to too many things. And we lose sight of what God has for our lives. And the more you keep one foot in the world, trust me, the harder it is to see God's will for your life. The more you've got one foot or one part of your life that's being entertained by the world, the harder it is that you will find God in your life and find purpose and direction. It's extremely hard to hear God when you're surrounded by Canaanites and parasites and all the other sites. And so often, that's where we end up. The world puts us in that position, and we stay in this position, and it's hard to see clearly what God has for you. So Abraham moved his tent, and he came to settle by the oaks of Mamre, which is at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. And everywhere he stopped, he built an altar. And every time he ended up going back, he went back to the altar, and the altar was a reminder of the relationship and the commitment that he made to God at that spot. God has done a wonderful thing. There are problems these days. We don't build altars no more, do we? That's Old Testament. We don't do that anymore. That just would be weird, to build an altar. We had a stone I used at the first couple of years we had this church. I found this stone. And when we were digging, putting the power up to the garage, my basement wall was rock. So I found this big stone. And it was really cool. It's just square. And I put it on the bottom of the chair, and I called it like an Ebenezer stone. I said, you know what? I said, that's the one thing in this building, my little garage. I said, it's the one thing God created with his hand. It wasn't touched by man or made by man. It was just a rock. It was there from the beginning of the world. Isn't that amazing when you think about it? I brought something in my church. It was there from the beginning of the world. God made it. It was a rock. And I put it there and I said, let it be a reminder when you take a vow or you take a stand for something for God. I said, even you put your hand on that rock. And you say, Lord, I pledge or I vow this day going forward that I'm going to change my life for you. I'm going to live for you. And every Sunday you would come into church and you'd see that rock. You think, I remember that rock. That's a rock I placed my hand on when I said, I'm going to go all for you this day, God. And we don't do altars anymore because they're Old Testament. But you know, you need to have an altar in your heart. Or you need to have a place that there's an altar to you. A place that you go to and you say, I remember that day, God, that we made this decision. I remember this day that we had this talk. And you know, Abraham built them all over the place. He dug wells, he did all kinds of stuff that, you know, years later they said, this is my father's Abram's well. What are you hanging on to? What do you hold on to that you can claim as a place where God met you? These decisions that you make along the way. Listen, let me tell you something. Salvation is one of the easiest decisions you'll ever make in life. Dying is one of the easiest things you'll do in life. You don't have to do anything, you're going to die. The hardest thing that you have to do, you have to live for Jesus. That's the hardest thing you will do in this life. Most rewarding, the hardest thing you'll ever do is the journey that you're making for Christ right now. And here was Abraham. He was the one that he was going to, he said, the number of your ancestors or your offspring, if they can count the dust, they can count your offspring. We're part of that offspring, by the way, that he was talking about. So what happened? Abraham went on to become